For a point of personal privilege.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, in this age of parents' rights, I'd like to dispense a little bit of American history with regards to the topic, because this recent iteration has me sitting with the fact that I feel like it wasn't designed to include parents like me, and also kind of reconcile with the fact that it never really has in Law and Liberty. I'd like to share the history of the non-consenting wet nurse. Wives of slave owners often timed their pregnancies with the mothers they enslaved and then forcefully separated these new mothers from their infants to serve as wet nurses to their own children. The enslaved mothers were often beaten and milked like cows to feed European American babies. For the women who enjoyed the fruit of their husband's product, breastfeeding was unfashionable. It hindered their ability to wear certain clothes, making wet nurses this symbol of status and of wealth. European Americans deemed this practice as having an air and a spare. They touted that the enslaved mothers, these wet nurses, freed up their women to give birth to the next prodigy. Because of enslavement and wet nursing, the invaluable breast milk was often referred to as liquid gold. And at the time, European Americans European Americans believed that the milk from the Africans in which they had enslaved provided this natural immunity from malaria. But the sole beneficiaries were European American children, while cow's milk or goat milk were fed as a substitute to enslaved children. This often resulted in a high mortality rate and susceptibility to disease in early childhood of those children. So in 2022, with health disparities between Americans of African descent and descendants of their captors, it runs really, really, really deep. We have higher rates of diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and Black children, quite frankly, are 500% more likely to die of death from asthma. There are certainly other contributing factors to this. However, they're rooted in our beginnings and exacerbated by our unwillingness to connect them to the past. While none of us participated in or are current victims of this practice, I implore that we exercise our empathy muscle and recognize that Black families are still living with the psychological, financial, and socio-political consequences of being products or being in service of. So today I ask that we kind of cease fire in this war on parenthood and honor the enslaved mothers, the wet nurses, my ancestors whose liquid gold coursed through the bloodlines of many in this nation. Though my foremothers and forefathers were not the beneficiary of the largesse of those women's breasts, we should all certainly acknowledge the honor their forced sacrifice to all the children and mothers of America, because this is American history. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.